Hello everyone. Your favorite taco connoisseur Microsoft Sam is back again for an update regarding Colden's last announcement. I know I sound like a broken record, but for some reason, after he had thought he's all free to go back into full video production, his hearing pitch has decided to be a bitch to him again, not helping matters at all when his old enemy, Duplicusis, begins annoying him again, albeit not as debilitating as how it was last year. So alas, my hiatus continues, leaving my cliffhanger still unresolved. I mean, how much longer is this going to be?
Please don't rush yourself, Sam. I completely understand how you feel. I mean, Colden has made very clear that, since he still hasn't finished business with his hearing problems, he still needs to check on his hearing for any slight differences, which is how he usually does whenever he wakes up from sleep, given that sweating doesn't become a problem. It takes a lot of time for his hearing to get back to normal, which is mostly is now, but sometimes there might be instances where things are going the opposite of what he's expecting. What I should suggest, to make up for all that time lost, is we should diversify the content a little, while it still features you, Sam. Since Colden's into BattleTech, maybe a series focusing on each individual BattleMech would do.
Given that Max Tac T-Rex walkers are around, and since I do talk like a Wikipedia page at times, I may give a lore series about BattleMechs a go. My lore series about them may be very similar to that of Grimdark Narrator's videos, backstory, tech specs, armaments, variants and all, but I do have to set up a somewhat semi-regular schedule for when I want to do those types of videos. What I'll do is that, for the first 4 videos, I'll cover each well-known mech from each different weight class, just to get primed up for what's to come. Afterwards, I'll set up a pattern of sorts where inner sphere mechs get covered in odd-numbered videos, with the clans in even numbers. Now, you might be asking, what is the inner sphere and what are the clans? Well, to give you an answer, we must first know about those factions, before we could dive right into the meat and potatoes of the first and new lore series. In the vast BattleTech setting, the inner sphere is a region of inhabited space spanning hundreds of light years where hundreds, even thousands of star systems have been colonized by human settlers. The inner sphere was once united under an interstellar council known as the Star League. At its peak before the Amaris Civil War, the Star League consisted of the Terran hegemony, which was formed after a military coup that has brought down the previous Terran alliance, the 5 quintets of space known as the Great Houses, more on them in a moment, and loose collections of inhabited space known as the Periphery. Ever since the Star League's formation, the inner sphere has seen its halcyon days with vast advancements in technology, especially militarily, in which BattleMechs at that time were at that peak. That's until when arch-douchebag extraordinaire Stefan Amaris steps in and kind of brought the entire Cameron family line to its knees, thus kickstarting what's known as the Amaris Civil War we mentioned earlier. It was Alexander Kerensky who had brought down Amaris' reign of tyranny over the Star League, which thus brought an end to the Civil War, but at a cost of astronomical proportions. Since there's no more members of the Cameron bloodline to inherit, Kerensky has asked the Great Houses to name a successor, which proved to be a big mistake. Since that ruling position of the Star League was now up for grabs, the Great Houses cannot agree which will rule the inner sphere, which then starts a series of conflicts that has lasted for centuries, dubbed the Succession Wars. Because of this, Kerensky got fed up with the Great House's constant backstabbing, to the point he has gathered what remains of his loyal followers who still believe in the original Star League, and spearhead what's known as the Exodus. Kerensky and his followers left the inner sphere without warning, in which it'll mark the beginning of what will be known as the clans. But before we get to the clans themselves, I want to talk about the Great Houses themselves first, and go through what they are, as of 3025, which takes place right at the end of the Third Succession War. First up is House Steiner, which serves as the ruling body of the first of the successor states we'll be discussing, the Lyran Commonwealth. The Lyran Commonwealth is among the wealthiest of the 5 successor states, thanks in part due to its strong industrial economy that has kept it prosperous and strong throughout the succession wars. The biggest issue, however, is that the Lyrans have pretty weak military leadership, due to so-called social generals being a thing. Nevertheless, the Lyrans and House Steiner have some of the strongest, most powerful BattleMechs in their arsenal, due to their preference to heavy armor and emphasis in defense. The Commonwealth is ruled by an Archon, and much of its culture and society is of Germanic heritage, though its citizens come from a wide spectrum of backgrounds and walks of life. Moving clockwise, the next great house we'll quickly discuss is House Carita, which rules over the Draconis Combine. Ruled by a coordinator, the Draconis Combine is among one of the most aggressive, militarily brutal and ruthlessly expansionist successor states, which makes it an absolute pain for not only the Lyran Commonwealth, but also the very next great house, House Davian and the Federated Sons, to deal with. The Combine is a highly militaristic society, which means its mech warriors are some of the most brutal and skilled people in the inner sphere. Much of its society and culture has its predominantly Japanese roots, so it's safe to assume to think of the Draconis Combine as Space Japan. Up next is House Davian, which rules over the Federated Suns. Easily among the largest and most powerful of the successor states, the Federated Suns and its people have been considered the strong believers of justice and liberty. Though in a precarious position between its volatile neighbors the Draconis Combine and the Capellum Confederation, the Federated Suns is capable of quick, ruthless and decisive action when warring with its hostile neighbors, and its citizens have garnered a sense of righteousness, which has come off as a double-edged sword throughout its history. Its culture and heritage can be traced back to French and English nobility of ancient era, which is how Earth is referred, as in BattleTech. While large and powerful, the Federated Suns' economy is nowhere that of its potential ally, the Lyran Commonwealth. Up next is House Merrick, represented by the Free Worlds League. Among one of the least documented successor states, the FWL is among one of the oldest states established in what would become the Star League, and, unlike its neighbors, is actually a federation of smaller states brought together under the democratic parliament rather than a single nation under one great house. In practice, the League has usually been a de facto military dictatorship under the Captains General of House Merrick, although their authority has been more contested than that of other House Lords. Its internal struggles, combined with its strong economy, has given the FWL a head start in the succession wars. Though the League is almost like Space America, much of its society and culture is actually of Austro-Hungarian descent, with some hints of India. Last, but somewhat least, we come to House Liao, represented by the Capellum Confederation, and arguably the closest BattleTech has come to both the Soviet Union and the main antagonist. Governed by conniving and insane chancellors, the Confederation is easily the smallest and newest of the inner-sphere powers, and is often at the losing end in the succession wars. The reason why I said the Confederation is like the Soviet Union is because people who live in this brutal police state must earn their citizenship through service in its Orwellian community. As such, the Capellans and Liaos are disliked by the other spheroid powers, and by the succession wars, they are ruthlessly torn apart by the neighboring FWL. It's no surprise that the Capellum Confederation traces its roots to both Russia and China. These 5 successor states, all making up the inner sphere, as how it is in 3025, are what represent how socio-political issues can still be a major issue in a science fiction setting, the unchanging aspect of the human condition. This remains true, because ever since Kerensky and his followers have left the inner sphere, the great houses are at each other's throats over whoever gets to rule the Star League, which has now collapsed. As such, we start to see this situation deteriorate into constant warfare between those powers, which consequently results in technological stagnation within the inner sphere. You see, all these centuries of incessant warfare has taken a toll in the technological knowledge of BattleMechs. In fact, it has gotten so bad that we're starting to see this tech somewhat devolving, but not in the way you might be thinking. What I mean by devolving is that, as the succession wars dragged in, Star League technology starts to become harder and harder to replace, as more and more mechs get destroyed in battle. That's why you see those mechs get fitted with inferior weapon systems, inferior electronic systems, missiles being replaced with rockets, etc. The technological situation has become so dire that the majority of Star League era hardware was lost to the inner sphere, in which all of this is now dubbed lost tech. However, as the Federated Suns and the Lyran Commonwealth come together to form the Federated Commonwealth, or FedCom for short, and after the 4th succession war was fought, the inner sphere starts to see a small technological resurgence due to the discovery of the Helm memory core, where the majority of Star League era tech is kept in. Now that we've covered the great houses themselves, it's now time we should proceed in talking about the descendants of Kerensky's legacy, known as the clans. After the Star League collapsed and the inner sphere was mired by a series of endless wars Kerensky had exactly feared it's going to happen, he and his surviving followers from the Star League Defense Force brought the majority of their mechs, material and whatever that sustains them to a long journey far away in the galactic north from the inner sphere with their jump-capable ships, trying to escape an unfixable situation brought upon by the collapse. After they have settled in the Pentagon worlds, Alexander's son Nicholas Kerensky had reorganized its society into what's known as the clans. These 20 original clans are a warrior society, where they prove to be ruthless in ritualized battles known as trials of possession, which is where a challenger tries to grab hold of their opponent's assets through one-on-one duels. Because the clans are a warrior society and are ruthless in combat, they have experienced a major renaissance in technological advancement for 250 years, which includes more powerful mechs with more protective ferrofibrous armor that's still been around since the Star League, more efficient heat management, significantly improved, longer-reaching and harder-hitting weapon systems, and the most defining aspect of the clans, the genetically enhanced super soldiers known as elementals, which pilot their namesake battle armor. The elementals are also a result of the clan's advancements in medical fields, meaning its warriors who are injured in battle will recover more quickly. But back to the point, of the 20 clans, the 4 of which you'll hear get mentioned most often are clans Wolf, Jade Falcon, Smoke Jaguar and Ghost Bear. This opens up another thing we'll discuss about, which are the two different clan philosophical ideologies which defines those clans in different ways. The two subtypes what I'm referring to are the Warden clans and the Crusader clans. The Warden clans are those who adhered to the Warden ideology in clan politics. The essence of the Warden ideal was that Alexander and Nicholas Kerensky had never intended for the clans to re-establish the Star League by force or conquer the Inner Sphere, but to remain aloof from its corrupting influence, while standing ready to intervene should the Inner Sphere require saving from an existential threat. The Crusader clans, meanwhile, are those who wanted to go back to the Inner Sphere and re-establish the Star League through any force necessary, and it's ultimately them who eventually got their way in spearheading the invasion via Operation Revival, better known to the spheroids as the Clan Invasion, in 3050. 3050 is the year when the technologically superior clans barged in through the periphery and go on their warpath inwards towards Terra, annihilating any and all Inner Sphere opposition that's been thrown at them. Now you know why BattleMechs represent 250 years of technological advancements, as well as 250 years of technological stagnation for the spheroids. This is because, when they first saw them, they had a really tough time responding to that new and unexpected threat that's been wiping out entire lances left and right. I can't imagine the spheroids who first saw those never-before-seen mechs like, what the hell are those things? I can't identify them, please send heavy reinforcements right now. Like geez, this has caused an immense amount of panic for the defenders who are struggling to combat this new threat during the early months of the invasion. However, with time, the spheroids eventually begin to understand that this new threat is actually the clans themselves, descended from Kerensky's legacy that has returned to the Inner Sphere and re-established what was once the original Star League, as well as making their point to the spheroids, how BattleMechs would have looked like with 250 years of technological advancement. This notion has prompted the great houses to mobilize their forces accordingly to better combat the clan threat from ever reaching Terra, the clan's ultimate goal. That's where the most unexpected faction, the highly secretive religious institution, Comstar, comes in. If you don't know what Comstar is, it is a vast, interstellar telecommunications company who is in charge of the Hyperpulse Generator, or HPG, network, where faster-than-light communication takes place, and are also the ones who come up with the Inner Sphere's main currency known as the C-bill. While supposedly neutral in its affairs during the succession wars, they are actually manipulated masterminds that kept the wars going behind the scenes, just so they can keep safeguarding the sacred Star League tech that's been lost to the spheroids until the Helm memory core was discovered. But back to the point, when the clan's ultimate goal of their invasion was Terra, Comstar quickly caught wind of this, and marks one of the very rare instances where those religious tech fanatics decided to take sides, which in this case, they sided with the Inner Sphere defenders in order to put an end to the clan threat. And by 3052, the climactic battle of Tukaid, Comstar's military arm, the Comguards, finally put a halt to the clan's warpath, thus ending the invasion with the Truce of Tukaid, which forbade any clans to push any deeper beyond that point for 15 years. That's pretty much all the lore I could give to you, but this is not the end of the story for BattleTech, as the story continues on, for one more century in universe, starting with the Fedcom Civil War, where the Federated Suns and the newly seceded Lyran Alliance are at each other's throats again, the Jihad era, where the Word of Blade becomes the new main antagonist, the Dark Age, where BattleTech gets turned into a crappy clicks game, and finally reaching the latest era that's still going on at the time of the video's making, the Eel Clan era. Well, that's all I have time for this update video. I've covered as much lore about BattleTech as I possibly could in under 15 minutes, but there might be some parts where some of my info might be wrong. If you want to correct me about what I said during my discussion about that sci-fi setting, then that's fine, because you'll then let me know in the comments. But once my hearing pitch gets back down to acceptable thresholds, I'll still make some content, whenever it's possible. I hope you enjoyed this primer for BattleTech, and I'll make sure I'll get out my first BattleMech lore video as soon as possible. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Cheerio.